To the fathers of men of the three faithful houses rich reward also was given. Eonwe came among them and taught them, and they were given wisdom and power and life more enduring than any others of mortal race have possessed. A land was made for the Edain to dwell in, neither part of Middle-earth nor of Valinor, for it was sundered by either by a wide sea, yet it was nearer to Valinor. It was raised out of the depths of the great water, and it was established by Aule and enriched by Yavanna, and the Eldar brought thither flowers and fountains out of Tol Eressëa. That land the Valar called Andor, the land of gift. And the star of Arendil shone bright in the west as token that all was made ready, and as a guide over the sea. And men marveled to see that silver flame in the paths of the sun. Hey, Tolkieneers, I'm Danny J.
And I'm Joel N.
And this is Trevor D.
And we are
Keep on Tolkien.
And today, we're getting into Men Part 2, The Race of Men.
That's right, guys. Today, for episode 83, is part 2 of our episodes on the Race
of Men. And where would we be without men?
Where would we be without men?
Men. And where would we be? We wouldn't be at the end of the War of Wrath is where we wouldn't be.
Right, yeah, because that's where we left off in the last episode when we were talking about men.
Right. We went all the way to the end of the first age is what we covered in the first episode. And we're going to cover the next two ages in this episode, guys.
Strap yourselves in and get ready.
Yeah.
Get ready for more men.
Get ready for as many men as you can handle.
It's raining men. Hallelujah, it's raining men. Great song. All right, so the War of Wrath has just concluded, guys.
End of the first age.
Yeah, the continent of Beleriand is completely fucked up, destroyed as a result. It's gone. It's gone. And we got a little quote from, what is this from? The Fall of Numenor, the foundation of the Grey Havens in Lindon. This is going to be read by Joel.
In the great battle and the tumults of the fall of Thangorodrim, there were mighty convulsions in the earth, and Beleriand was broken and laid waste, and northward and westward many lands sank beneath the waters of the great sea. In the east, in Osirian, the walls of Ered Luin were broken, and a great gap was made in them towards the south, and a gulf of the sea flowed in, and into that gulf the river Lund fell by a new course. And it was called, therefore, the Gulf of Lune. That country had of old been named Lindon by the Noldor, and this name it bore thereafter.
Yes, of course. So, the Eldar, they leave Middle-earth in great numbers, basically. A lot of them hightail it, and they go to, they are not actually allowed to go straight up to Valinor, but they're allowed to settle in Tol Eressëa.
Yeah, just off the shores.
Yeah. They build a new city called the Haven of Avalone, and that's nearest to the Blessed Realm within sight of Aman, but they never get to go there.
They don't get to go there, but they're close. They get some of that bliss.
But where they do get to go is to Numenor, and that's why we're mentioning it right now, because it's Avalone and Numenor, big connection there.
Yeah, they're kind of neighbors.
Yeah.
So we have an excerpt here from the letters of J.R.R. Tolkien, letter 131 to Milton Waldman in 1951. Read by Trevor.
The next cycle deals, or would deal, with the Second Age. But it is on Earth a dark age, and not very much of its history is, or need be told. In the great battles against the first enemy, the lands were broken and ruined, and the west of Middle-earth became desolate. We learn that the exiled elves were, if not commanded, at least sternly counseled to return to the west and there be at peace. They were not to dwell permanently in Valinor again, but in the lonely isle of Eressëa, within sight of the Blessed Realm.
Yeah, they're kind of being cucked by the Blessed Realm there a little bit.
But I mean, they still, like we said, they get some of that bliss, though. They get some.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Eressëa is like,
it's great.
You know, it's like East St. Louis and St. Louis, you know? It's like the same thing, right?
Well, it's like, and it's nice to have like an island. Like you can defend an island pretty well if you got a good navy, and
yeah,
I'm sure they did.
Oh yeah.
So let's jump into the Second Age proper here with men.
So yeah, Second Age. So it's time to go to Numenor. Let's get into the immigration to Numenor.
So at the beginning of the Second Age, the Valar raised out of the sea an island that would later become the island of Numenor. And this was a gift to the race of men, at least specifically the men that helped in the War of Wrath to defeat Morgoth at the end of the First Age. And the greater part of those, now called Edain, who survived that war with Morgoth, they journeyed to the island and they sailed in ships provided by and steered by the elves. And we've got a lovely excerpt here from the Silmarillion, the Akalabeth, read by Danny.
Then the Edain set sail upon the deep waters, following the star, and the Valar laid peace upon the sea for many days. They sent sunlight and a sailing wind, so that the waters glittered before the eyes of the Edain like rippling glass, and the foam flew like snow before the stems of the ships. Settling their course toward the star, the Edain came at last over the leagues of the sea, and saw afar the land that was prepared for them, Andor, the land of gift, shimmering in a golden haze. Then they went up out of the sea and found a country fair and fruitful, and they were glad. And they called that land Elena, which is starwards, but also Anduni, which is westerness, or Numenore in the High Eldarin tongue. This was the beginning of that people that in the grey elven speech are called the Dunedain, the Numenorians, kings among men.
I love the Numenorians, guys. They're so cool.
Are you a budding Dunedain head?
I don't know about budding. I mean, I feel like I've liked the Dunedain for a good long time, too.
But do you like sit and like read through the Annals of the Kings for fun?
Oh, surely. Absolutely. No, I've never done that.
It's like, yeah, all the time.
That's like masturbation to me, guys.
Well, and
reading the Annals of the Kings, yeah.
Like, someone, son of someone.
As many problems as we've had with like the Rings of Power, I really liked their depiction of Numenorians, like the architecture, the island itself. I mean, the people were kind of assholes, but just the general vibe was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, I remember gasping out loud the first time we went to, I think it was Romania, right? They show in the movie, I believe.
A lot of
the show.
Yeah, a lot of the art design in the show, a lot of the art direction, I think, was really great.
Yeah. Let's get back into that migration to the great island of Numenor.
Yeah, that migration.
Yeah, migration there. It took 50 years, and it brought 5,000 to 10,000 men, women, and children.
That's a pretty big exodus of men.
Yeah.
Or I suppose at this point they would be called Edain.
Edain, yeah.
They're kind of like high men.
Mm-hmm.
So these Numenorians, as they're now called, they were also granted a lifespan 3 times that of average men. So while most Numenorians lived around 350 years now, there was also royal kindred who lived even longer, which was around up to like 400 years or more for some.
Yeah, Elros lived for friggin' ever.
Elros lived for a long time, yeah.
The longer lifespan resulted in an older age of adulthood, which was 25 years. I think that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, 25. And we were just discussing it earlier. For hobbits, it was 33.
33. Yeah. So let's. You want to hit up a Trev check?
Yeah, I think it's time because I've got some questions about this gift the Numenorians are given.
Well, we've got some answers, my friend.
Yeah. Okay. So my first question, right? Sort of a statement too. It kind of sounds like Iluvatar doomed Numenor from the start by giving them longer lifespans, because they eventually they fall to wanting immortality, right?
Right.
After they're corrupted. So I mean, why not just replace the gift of men with the gift of Numenor? Like, don't let them die.
Well, I don't know. Apparently, this is the gift of death is better than this cool island. Even I guess I don't know. Iluvatar seems to know the answers. Only the Father knows. That's
also at that point, wouldn't they be more or less elves?
What would distinguish them from the firstborn then?
The fact that they're still secondborn? That's about all I got.
Nah.
The fact that they're always a giant number 2.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what about, were only the people that went to the island given the gift? Like, and did they have a deadline in order to get it?
Yeah, so only the people that settled on the island and their descendants were given this gift. And they did have a deadline to get there. There was only 50 years a migration period. And if you didn't get over there, the elves stopped doing that after 50 years.
Yeah, the elven transport was cut off at 50 years.
You're cut off.
So if you were there at the 365th day and the last boat is heading out, and you miss it by 5 minutes,
You're fucked.
You're fucked. No more extended lifespan for you. Like maybe you swam after that and got there, but you're
Yeah.
too late.
Swam across the sea to get your gift.
and then you didn't get the gift because you're too late.
You were late because you were getting high for the boat ride, and
That's
you just
right.
missed it.
You
You
just
know?
missed it.
Damn.
So, okay, what about, obviously people were old at some point. Like, were they grandfathered in with their current lifespan?
That's a great question, and only Trevor would think of that question.
For real though.
I don't know.
You're
If-
saying
yeah.
like if somebody was already like 80 years old, would they now get to live to be like 380 years old?
Yeah,
or something
and
like that.
if they did so, would it just be long old age?
I was not able to find that anywhere. That's a great question.
Great question. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder, who they'd take up their complaints to about that.
Yeah.
Right. You gave me longer life, but it sucks. I'm so old I can't move.
I'm so old.
Okay, all right. Last question that I have. So how would the Numenorians have dealt with population growth? I mean, they'd have to probably cull their not cull. Cull is the wrong word.
Oh shit. Okay.
Ooh.
They have to slow their population growth for fear of overpopulation, right? I mean, they live on an island.
Right. They live on an island and they live a long time, so they kind of started to live like the elves and have small families.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
They only Numenorians typically have like 1 or 2 kids.
It seems to frequently be an effect of longer lifespans, fewer kids.
Yeah, just fewer kids.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that makes sense economically, for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
These kids are going to be around forever.
Yeah.
Never get away from them. Save up that college fund.
Never. Well, let's get into the Numenorians a little bit more. Numenor was ruled by the line of Elros, son of Earendil, and there were 32 kings in total from Elros to Pharazôn.
Yeah, the Numenorian civilization was essentially the height of the power of the race of men. The kingdom lasted for almost 3,000 years, from Second Age 32 to Second Age 3,319. That's a long fucking time. And they became essentially a great nation, like one of the greatest nations
Ever.
on the planet.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
It seems kind of funny to me that an island nation, like off the side, who can't even go east, it got so big.
They can't go west.
West, yes, can't go west.
Yes.
They became so big from that one spot taking over the east.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, they went everywhere.
They went friggin' everywhere. And their knowledge and craft and lore was enriched by their close relationship with the elves of Tol Eressëa.
Yeah, the elves often visited the island of Numenor in the early days when they were still friendly with the elves.
Mm-hmm.
And the elves brought many cool-ass gifts to the Numenorians, like the white tree, for example.
Yeah, including the white tree given to Eldarion as a wedding gift. And that was always a symbol of the friendship of the elves and the faithfulness to the Valar and the old ways, the good ways, as it were.
Yeah, I love that story when he's first given the tree at their wedding, and he's like, "Ooh,
This will make a good boat.
Yeah, what kind of tree is this? It looks like it would make good lumber for a boat." And the elves are like
They're
horrified,
just confused and horrified.
They're like,
yeah.
"We do not chop down these trees. These
Yeah.
are sacred trees."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh,
Why
sorry."
would you do such a thing? Yeah.
It's such a cool gift, though, to be given a tree. Like, here's something that's going to potentially last through multiple generations
Yeah.
of your family.
Well, Adarion's name literally means "of the trees" in Quenya. So like he loved trees. He was all about trees.
He was the forest master. He was the one that actually started the practice of replanting trees
Yeah.
after they'd cut them down to make boats.
Yeah.
Wow. What a,
He was in the process of reforesting the island, basically.
Yeah, he was the Lorax of Numenor, dude.
what a smart person.
Yeah.
He wanted to be able to keep making boats. In
Yeah.
order to keep making boats, you essentially have to farm trees.
You got to farm trees. Yep.
Renewable resources,
There you
guys.
go.
Yep. Well, let's get into their sailing east, their colonization of Middle Earth.
Yeah, because they were basically the ultimate colonizers.
Oh yeah, totally. And during the time of the Great Sea Kings, the Numenorians greatly expanded their sphere of influence. I'm talking everywhere, guys. Like, if you really want to know about this more, check out Karen Fonstedt's Voyages of the Numenorians map in the Atlas of Middle Earth.
Yeah, that's a really cool map.
Yeah, they go friggin' places I didn't even know were real.
Yeah, they made they made settlements everywhere,
Everywhere.
but they were not allowed to sail west.
Yep, as long as you could sail west, as long as you could see the island.
As long as you could still see Numenor, that was as far west as you could go. They didn't want them coming anywhere near Valinor,
Yeah.
essentially.
It's actually kind of nice that they have that sort of limit,
that hard cutoff.
that hard cutoff. Like,
yeah.
don't go
They were
any further.
already, as far as like the world map goes, though, they were already so far west anyway. The only thing further west from them was just Valinor. Everything else was to the east and south.
Yeah,
and
so
north.
like if you want to be where it's at, where
So
it's
they
hopping.
were given free reign over pretty much the whole world.
Yeah, except for one place.
Except for
yeah.
one place.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Iluvatar.
Yeah.
Really giving it to the men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Numenorians, they began to have colonies friggin' everywhere. And they first came as benevolent lords. The men of Middle Earth were astonished by their power and majesty.
Yeah, because they were significantly larger sized people too. Like they were big, burly
Yes,
dudes.
they're average 7 foot.
Yeah, and the Numenorians originally, they enriched the lives of the men of Middle Earth, teaching them much craft and lore, because they
Like
learned
the
a lot
elves-
themselves.
Like the elves did to them.
Exactly,
Yeah.
passing on the knowledge. And this
Mhm.
policy would change later, unfortunately, and eventually the Numenorians would become absolute tyrants, and the men of Middle Earth would essentially learn to fear them.
Oh, yeah, totally. As oppressors, yeah. Let's talk about the Kingsmen and the Faithful. I know we've talked about that a few times, so we're going to try to keep it a little brief here.
Yeah, so as the kingdom of Numenor grew in power, the people of Numenor began to shun the Eldar because the people of Numenor started to resent the gift of men, that is death. They got these longer lifespans, they got all their cool stuff now, they don't want to die. So some of these Numenorians remained in friendship with the Eldar and maintained their reverence for the Valar, and these people were kind of the smaller, they were the fewer number, they were called the Faithful.
Yeah, the Elendili, the admirers of the stars / the faithful. Most people became hateful as fuck, and they supported the shunning of the Eldar and the abandonment of the old ways. And those assholes were called the Kingsmen.
Yeah, so during the days of the division in Numenor, some of the faithful decided to start leaving the island and start returning to Numenor. Why hang out on an island full of assholes?
Full of hateful assholes.
So these faithful that left and went back to Middle-earth, they established the port of, I'm going to pronounce it wrong,
It's a hard one.
Pelargir,
Pelargir, yeah, I think so.
near the mouth of Anduin. That one always trips me up.
Yep,
I keep wanting to say Pelargir.
yep,
Yeah, even it's just spelled kind of awkward for pronouncing.
yeah. But that's the ancient, port on the at the mouth of the
Yeah,
Anduin.
established by the faithful, but not too far from there, south down the coastline, is where the Kingsmen established the colony of Umbar.
Yes. So let's get into the Akalabeth, the destruction of Numenor.
Calibeth, that's a really cool. Why Tolkien just has so many
Calibeth.
cool freaking words, man.
Yeah, it means downfall in Adunaic, right? Yeah. During the reign of Ar-Pharazôn, the last king of Numenor, Sauron had been taken to the island of Numenor as a prisoner.
Yeah, and Sauron eventually becomes the advisor to the king and encourages the king to openly rebel against the Valar. And this would lead to the destruction of the entire island. And before the fall, though, the leaders of the faithful were kind of given a heads up and allowed to escape on 9 ships.
Yeah, they had some time before they were na, hey, goodbye.
Nice to have a warning before a disaster.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, so among the faithful was Elendil and sons. So Elendil, son of Amandiel, and his 2 sons Isildur and Anarion, they escaped the destruction with the rest of the faithful, and they sailed over to Middle-earth. And they also brought with them a bunch of really cool historical artifacts from Numenor, like the Seeing Stones, for example. A whole bunch of really cool stuff.
Oh yeah, cool shit. Narsil as well. Bring a bear here.
Barahir.
They were actually separated during the crossing, and they landed in Middle-earth in 2 different places and established 2 different kingdoms.
So they established the North Kingdom, which became known as the Kingdom of Arnor. That was established by Elendil.
In the South Kingdom of Gondor, the Land of Stone, was established by Isildur and Anarion, brothers.
Yeah, Elendil's sons. So it's kind of like the Father's Kingdom, and the 2 below that, the Southern Kingdom, where the sons kind of had their
Yeah,
way.
had their domain, yeah.
So considering how long Numenor was around, like, some 3,000 years,
Yeah.
and then this whole disaster happens, like these are pretty big world events. This kind of seems like it should mark the end of the Second Age.
Yeah, that is a common misconception, though. I fell prey to that for many years.
Same.
I thought it was the end of the Second Age, but no, the Second Age is the fall of Sauron. So there is a gap between the destruction of Numenor and the end of the Second Age. I'm glad you asked that question because a lot of people get that mixed up.
Yeah, I thought that for the longest time. Because, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because the first
Yeah,
age
because the
ended,
first age ended with the cataclysm, right?
and then you've got the second cataclysm of Numenor, plus this is also when the Earth becomes round.
Is made round, yeah.
That's huge.
That's a very significant change
That
in the
sounds
world.
like a very significant change.
But not the end to...
Not enough for
yeah.
a new age. So technically, half of the second age is flat Earth, and then half of it is round
It's like
Earth.
2/3 and a third, I think. But yeah.
Okay, so 2/3 of it is flat Earth.
Yeah.
How that must be so weird for people sailing, right? Because like your horizon suddenly goes from like flat and you can see things as far as a telescope could look to.
Yeah.
That ship just disappeared over the horizon. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
That's like when the burning of the ships at Lascar in the Silmarillion, you can see them from the other continent.
Yeah, from the other side of the sea. 'Cause
And
it's
you're
flat.
like, why? How could that's possible?
Yeah,
and you're
it's
like,
so far
oh,
away.
the world is flat. That's why.
the world's flat.
Yeah. So let's get into that, the Last Alliance, what ends up ending the Second Age.
Yeah, which
There you go.
actually ends the Second Age. So at the end of the Second Age, this is when the free people of Middle-earth banded together to overthrow Sauron and Mordor, and this was known as the Last Alliance.
Yeah, after a long campaign that we're not going to get into because we've covered it many, many times, including in an entire episode about the Last Alliance.
That's right.
Elendil and Elendil, the High King, is slain along with his son Anarion
Yeah, and
and
so
his best buddy Gil-galad.
that's right. Yeah, Gil-galad is where he falls.
Yeah,
So Elendil's remaining son Isildur essentially becomes the High King, and after Isildur's death, the kingdoms become sundered, and they would remain that way until the end of the Third Age, after the War of the Ring.
yeah. And just a note, Isildur dies by being betrayed by the ring. We all remember the disaster of the Gladden Fields, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the line of Isildur, they ruled the north. They continued. His son Valandil went on to rule in Arnor. In the line of Anarion, they ruled in the south.
So let's get into move away from the Numenorians and the, men of Westerness in exile. Let's go into some of just the regular-ass middlemen
Yeah,
of Middle-earth.
your everyday kind of Joes. You
Folks
know?
who didn't make the ferry over to Numenor in time.
Yeah, they decided to stick it out over here in the Middle Earth, While a good number of the Edain did sail to Numenor in the beginning of the Second Age, some did decide to stay behind in Middle Earth.
And these men became known as the middlemen, as opposed to the Numenorians, which were more high men.
Never really called that, but that's the implication, right? That they're the high men.
Right.
Yeah.
did these guys know that they were giving up prolonged life to stay in Middle Earth?
I don't know if they were
I'm
told.
not sure. Honestly.
I feel like that'd be a hard thing to turn down if you knew.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, was there a flyer going around or something?
Yeah.
Did they have like hard regrets years later when the Numenorians came over and went, "Hey guys,
If they understood that history, I bet. Yeah. It's probably lost to them, that history, but if they did remember that, they'd be salty.
It'd be funny.
Yeah.
One of their friends comes back after like 50 years, finally sails back over the sea, and all of a
like
sudden your friend's like
7
foot
foot tall.
like a foot and a half taller, he's like big and burly, and he's like hasn't aged a day, and here you're like 80 years old, and you're like, hey,
What the
buddy,
fuck?
what,
Yeah.
what the fuck
remember the
happened?
good old days?"
He used to have, your friend used to have a big burly beard, but now that he's Dunedain, he's clean shaven.
Oh, that's right, because
Yeah.
the Dunedain don't have
They can't grow beards. Yeah. Dunedain heads out there. The Dunedain don't grow beards.
Does their beard just fall out when they got on the island? just
They're
like,
sprinkled,
Just- yeah. That'd be
sprinkled with a
weird.
little bit of elf magic dust, and their beards fell off.
Yeah. So these guys are left behind, much like the shitty Kirk Cameron movie based on the book, which is like a Protestant fantasy type novel, sci-fi type.
I read one of those books.
The first one, Left Behind.
Yeah,
I've seen the movie. I've never read the book, but the movie was something. It was
I
really
wouldn't-
something.
I finished it. I wouldn't say that I enjoyed it, but
Kirk Cameron is really something.
Something.
Yeah, something.
He is something.
He sure is.
I'm glad we have Tolkien then.
Yeah. But these middlemen would go on to establish settlements all over Middle Earth. And let's get into some of the subgroups of middlemen in Middle Earth.
Yeah, let's start by talking about the Northmen of Rvannian.
Northmen!
We talked about them a little bit back during our Rohan season.
Yeah,
right?
as you might know them as the ancestors of the Rohirrim. Yeah, we'll get into that later, though.
Yeah, so the Northmen of Rvannian, they're descendants of the ancient house of Hador. And the House of Ahad, or some of you may remember, they were the greater group of the two northern groups of Atani that had left Hildorian in the first stage. We covered this in the last episode.
Yes.
I'm sure you all remember.
Check that out if you haven't. I don't know why you'd be listening to part 2 without having heard part 1, but if you are, I suggest going back to do that. This will make a lot more sense to you. But when the greater group was settled on the Sea of Rune, some of the men stayed there and then migrated further into Rovanion later. The Northmen, as they came to be known, they were originally pretty primitive, even though my sociology teacher would kill me for saying that term. It's ethnocentric. Ooh, yeah. But yeah, they were kind of primitive in a way.
Why would the Northmen be so primitive? I mean, because we know the Atani had basic skills when they were part of the greater group around the Sea of Rune, and we know that they had boats and livestock and things, so they were capable of a lot of variety of things they needed to do to survive,
crafting and things. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was their setup like in the north? How did they live?
Well, they were living pretty simple lives, Trevor. They had pretty small, sparsely populated villages all around. They didn't have very much defense against enemies. That was a big problem. They had basic weapons and defense that they, learned early on in the first age, but nothing that could withstand the forces of Sauron that would soon be a problem.
Yeah, their people had lived in relative peace throughout the First Age, but that all changed after the War of Wrath. The leftover forces of Morgoth made their way eastward into the region, and essentially the Northmen found themselves at war, almost constantly.
It almost sounds like they shafted themselves, by not going to Numenor.
Yeah, I don't know if
again, not getting the gift of Numenor and then staying behind.
I don't know.
Well, they couldn't have gone to Numenor because they didn't help in the First Age.
Oh, so the middlemen are of those who did not. Okay,
yeah, these particular middlemen.
Gotcha.
Some of the Edain, stayed as well. But this all changed when the Northmen became friends with Durin's folk. Yeah, dwarves. This was during the Second Age. The Alliance of Dwarves and Men was founded. This was something I didn't know all that much about.
I didn't either, honestly. For as much as I love the dwarves, I did not know much about this.
There's a lot of different alliances I'm noticing that are formed throughout Tolkien.
Oh yeah, because that's a very Tolkien-y thing, like banding together to fight evil.
Camaraderie,
camaraderie, yeah. Solidarity, as it were.
Well, that makes sense. Well, okay, so I'm curious then about this particular alliance of dwarves and men. Mm-hmm. What did both sides get out of it? I mean, please don't tell me the dwarves got shafted.
Shafted. The Northmen, they gave the dwarves horses, and they taught them about livestock and animal husbandry and things like this, agricultural techniques. But also trade between the two peoples was very, very important, because what the dwarves can't make themselves, they obtain in trade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they can't make everything. There's certain things they don't get. And Durin's folk, they not only taught the men crafting, but they also traded with them for some of their dwarven stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so the dwarves essentially provided the men with great metallurgy skills, taught them defense tactics and other things about the ways of war, because at this point in time, the dwarves are a pretty war-hardened race.
Oh, yeah, they've been fighting since,
They've almost always...
Years of the trees.
I feel like the dwarves were a war-hardened race, but for war.
Yeah.
They're just kind of...
yeah, they're kind of made that way.
They're kind of made that way.
Okay, so they kind of taught each other some necessary stuff for survival.
Yeah, definitely. It was symbiotic.
Mutually beneficial.
Okay, so I assume this now means that the Northmen can defend themselves from Morgoth's men, right? Orcs, whatever.
Yeah.
So how did they fare after that?
Well, yeah, this alliance, it allowed the Northmen to finally be able to defend their borders with the help of Durin's folk and safeguard their people from orc marauders.
Yeah, and this did bring about some relative peace until the War of the Elves and Sauron. So there was a lot of good that came out of this.
Yeah.
How long would you say this peace lasted for?
It was around 1,600 years or so.
It's a significant amount of peace.
Significantly long time.
The late 1600s was when the War of Elves and Sauron started, the latter years of the 1600s.
The Second Age was a long time.
Yeah, can you imagine being alive and it just being knowing peace for years and generations even?
Yeah, generations even. Must be weird. Yeah, we're Americans. We don't know about that, right? We have we got wars going on every few years. Sometimes they overlap. It's weird.
So the alliance of men and dwarves was eventually broken during the War of Elves and Sauron, when Sauron invaded and occupied the region of Rovanion.
Right. Most of their towns and cities were destroyed. The Northmen came to hide in the caves and encampments on the eaves of the Greenwood.
Yeah, the dwarves at this point completely abandoned their outer settlements and shut themselves inside Khazad-dûm. They closed the doors and they just endured the long siege because they could afford to do that.
Yeah. Gil-galad and friends would liberate Rovanion and push Sauron back to Mordor in 1701 of the Second Age.
So I know we've talked about this in the past, but like, what gave Gil-galad the edge to best Sauron? Like, because from what I remember, wasn't he kind of getting his ass kicked in the War of Elves and Sauron?
Yes. At first, Sauron controlled more land than he had ever controlled. Ever.
Mm-hmm. So it's like Sauron, Gondor, who had more?
Oh, Sauron.
Sauron.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Sauron literally owned everything from the Misty Mountains east.
Sauron essentially owned Gondor and parts of the stuff west of the Misty
Parts
Mountains,
of Eriador, too, yeah.
Sauron the Conqueror, okay.
Yeah, exactly. But the key to Gil-galad's success was actually his alliance with the Númenóreans.
Yeah, in the Second Age 1700, this is when Gil-galad and his Númenórean buddies, under the King Tar Minister, they scored a huge victory in the Battle of the Gwathlo.
I gotta correct you here. Tar Minister was not king at the time, but he was head of the navy.
Oh, excuse me.
But it's the person that would go on to be known as Tar Minister.
Thank
Just
you.
for you Dunedain heads out there that really want us to keep it straight, I gotta keep it straight.
I think you are that lone Dunedain. But yes,
I'm doing it.
This is what we need you for.
I'm Dunedanny J. That's what they call me.
J.
Yeah. No. But yeah, gotta set it straight.
It seems kind of weird to me that dwarves also had friends in the Númenóreans. How did Gil-galad become allied with them?
Well, during the reign of Tar Meneldur, Gil-galad became really good friends with the king's son, Eldarion the Mariner, because he was always sailing back to Middle-earth.
Yeah, Eldarion. Always making friends with people in Middle-earth. So Gil-galad sent a letter back with Eldarion, essentially to give to his father, Tar Meneldur. And this letter asked for help in the struggle against the growing power of Sauron in Middle-earth. So that kind of essentially asked to team up with him. He's like, pleaded for his help.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And when the Númenóreans became to come to Middle-earth in great numbers, they became fast friends and allies with the Northmen.
Buds.
Yeah,
the Númenóreans recognized them as descendants of the greater group, making them essentially distant kinsmen.
Yeah, because the Númenóreans are partially descended from the House of Hador, so they're relatives, man. Yeah. They're distant cousins.
Part of that greater group as well.
It's nice that they actually recognize that.
Yeah, because they know their history, dude. They know their lore.
They were part of it. Yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome.
Well, yeah, this is their family history to them. Yeah,
I wonder what that family tree looks like. Just all of a sudden branches off in two directions.
Yeah.
Now, when it came to the Last Alliance, it was not specifically stated that the Northmen were involved in the Last Alliance, but it can be assumed at least some of them fought in Anarian's army of Gondor. I mean, it'd be hard to believe that, some of them would probably want to fight.
You think?
Yeah, at least a good handful of them should probably want to fight to avenge the utter destruction of their homeland.
Yeah, they were enslaved and stuff, man. Yeah, they would be pretty bitter. I would be. So let's get into some other men that we might not know a whole lot about. Let's get into Easterlings of the Second Age.
Here we go. I like Easterlings, I think.
Yeah, they're cool. They have a cool history.
So most of the Easterlings we hear about in the Second Age are essentially servants of Sauron, because Sauron gained a huge following in the East during the Second Age. So this was essentially to secretly gain strength to combat the growing power of the Númenóreans after Sauron's defeat in the War of the Elves and Sauron.
Yeah, he is seething from that defeat still.
So he's just plotting, building his armies, recruiting a bunch of people out east.
Yeah.
And there were some small number of Easterlings that actually resisted the rule of Sauron and did not go on to worship him or Morgoth.
Yeah, and this turned into an all-out, straight-up insurgency revolution type uprising in parts of the East, like an armed rebellion. And this was fueled by the Blue Wizards working against Sauron. And we have a fun excerpt from History of Middle-earth, Volume 12, The Five Wizards, from Joel.
But the other two Istari were sent for a different purpose. Morenatar and Romestamo, Darkness Slayer and East Helper, their task was to circumvent Sauron, to bring help to the few tribes of men that had rebelled from Melkor worship, to stir up rebellion, and after his first fall, to search out his hiding, in which they failed, and to cause dissension and disarray among the Dark East. They must have had very great influence on the history of the Second and Third Age in weakening and disarraying the forces of the East, who would both in the Second and Third Age otherwise have outnumbered the West.
Yeah, big ups to the Blue Wizards. We previously on this podcast had shit on them for seemingly doing nothing.
We shafted them.
Yeah, we shafted. Yeah,
Blue Wizards.
Blue Wizard shafted by KOT. But they were really doing work over there, and then we never heard from them again.
If it weren't for them, our asses would have been toast.
Yep.
That passage was saying that if they hadn't intervened, that Sauron would have easily outnumbered.
Oh, easily, 100%. Yeah.
I mean, we already each time Sauron is defeated, it's basically by the skin of our teeth. Anyway,
and that's with them fighting on two fronts essentially, because you got the armed insurrection going on at home, and you're trying to empty your lands to fight for Sauron.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't have been cool, you would have been stretched very thin.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like men are quite impressive when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the Druidane of the Second Age.
Yeah, so at the beginning of the Second Age, this is when our friends, the Druidane of Beleriand, were still super tight with their homies, the House of Haleth. And a small number of them followed their friends over to Numenor. And there they were essentially leeches and worked with stone and wood.
Yeah. Yeah, they were into medicine, like leechcraft, not like literal blood-sucking leeches.
Right.
Leechcraft? That's
leechcraft, yeah.
That's a fun word.
It's like, the people that, like a leech will go to an apothecary and they'll buy, things for leechcraft. It's a cool little term. But yeah, and they worked with stone and wood. They were really good with that shit too.
Yeah, the Druidane began to leave the island during the reign of Tar Eldarion, and they may have been able to sense that something was coming, that the downfall was going to happen. But if they did, man, that was really fucking early.
Yeah, and if they did, because we do know that by the time the island fell, there were no Druidane left on the island.
Right, yeah, in the time of Aldarion, that's kind of like a good time for Numenor. That's kind of
that was a good time for them to check out.
Do you guys think the Druidane started to leave when the corruption of Numenor started?
Actually, it was way before that. It was during the reign of Tar Eldarion, and that was when the trade routes really matured into what they would be, where you can travel back between Middle-earth and Numenor like easily.
Yeah, it finally was safe to make that trip pretty regularly.
Yeah, but in essence, they noped out as soon as they could. Anywhere starting 882 was their first year of the reign of Aldarion, so they were there
they were there for a good amount of time at least.
Yeah, from 32 SA to 882 in the very least.
So they were there for at least 800 years.
Yeah.
Knowing what we've talked about when it comes to the Druidane, I bet you they left because they had already categorized all the plants and animals, and they were getting bored.
Yeah, because the island, right?
Yeah, limited.
In Middle-earth, the Druidane, they suffered further persecution. Big surprise. Everyone's always trying to fucking beat up on the Druidane.
Right, leave them alone.
They were driven from their homes in the White Mountains during the height of Sauron's power. So yeah, during the War of Elves and Sauron, they were totally oppressed and just driven from their homes. But they did remain in small settlements in Middle-earth, however. Most notably, the Druidon Forest.
Yeah, that's where we come to know them when we interact with them in the Third Age in the Lord of the Rings story.
Yeah, which brings us to our Third Age section. Yay!
Yeah, buddy.
The one we're all most familiar with.
Yeah, this is the most familiar stuff.
Well, this is when men really shine, too. Like, this is the age... Well, I should say men really shine during Numenor, but the Third Age, as we get into the later ages, has become more of the ages of men, right?
Right. It's where it's more dominated by men culturally, I guess you'd say, than the Eldar previously had been. So let's get into those Numenorian realms in exile. Let's get into Gondor, the land of stone.
Glorious Gondor.
Glorious Gondor. Yeah, there was a period of time, glorious Gondor, in the days of the king, when Gondor grew to be huge and powerful kingdom with a large, large sphere of influence.
Yeah, but that sphere of influence did not last forever because eventually Gondor would wane.
Right.
And Gondor began to decline when they were faced with 3 different catastrophes at the same time.
At the same time?
Yeah.
Not really, back to back.
Back to, okay.
Like consecutively.
I'm sorry, I should say consecutive.
That would suck if they were all at the same time. Holy shit, that would suck. But yeah, they call them the 3 great evils, and that is the Kinstrife, the Great Plague, and the Wain Riders / Balcoth War.
Yeah, and if you want to hear more about these events, check out our Gondor episode in our Kingdoms of the Dunedain series.
Yeah, our first series that I'm really proud of, I think.
Yeah, that was one of our real first good trilogies.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about Gondor, let's talk about the rule of the stewards.
Yes. Eventually, the line of Anarion did fail, with the disappearance of the last and childless king, King Erenur, in Third Age 2050. So that's when they're no longer ruled by kings.
Well, they still stuck around for a good amount of time though after the Second Age.
Oh yeah.
Is that so? Would we say that's probably another long-lasting period of peace?
Not necessarily.
No,
Not
Okay.
necessarily. No, there's always kind of war going on, and there was a lot of conquering going on at that time too.
Yeah.
So that's war. That's elective. That's elective war, really.
Elective war.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the rule of Gondor was essentially handed over to the House of the Stewards at this point after we lost the last king. And the last ruling steward of Gondor was Denethor II, and he was ended when he committed suicide in 3019 during the Battle of Pelennor Fields.
Yeah. I guess you could say technically Faramir is the last ruling steward, but he was only ruling steward for like a day because he was unconscious.
I suppose that is true.
Yeah.
That is true.
So did
Yeah.
it count then?
I don't know if it counts. Yeah, that's why I didn't. That's why I didn't add it. But we might as well bring it up. But let's get into the Aragorn and the reunifications of the kingdoms.
Yeah, so after the passing of the last steward, Denethor, and the end of the Third Age, Aragorn and the line of Isildur would eventually return to Gondor during the War of the Ring, and after the downfall, Aragorn is crowned the new High King of the Dunedain, new High King of both kingdoms.
Yeah, yay.
We know that Aragorn is sort of like the last of the Dunedain, right?
He's the last chieftain of the Dunedain.
There are other Dunedain. He's not the only Dunedain.
Yeah, they kind of make it seem that way in the movie.
Yeah.
But in the book, like he's got like the Grey Company.
He's got like
He's got a crew of Dunedain that roll with him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because like Aragorn obviously would have the gift of Numenor to some degree, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So like, and I'm assuming the rest of his line would other people around him or somehow also?
Yeah, any of his relatives, cousins, uncles, aunts, they all
Anyone
have
in
it.
his bloodline, yeah.
But let's talk about the north a little bit. Arnor, the northern kingdom. It was powerful for a time, but eventually began to decline.
Yeah, and this was in part due to the plague and the Civil War.
Yeah, let's talk about that civil war and the sundering of Arnor.
Yeah, so after the death of Erendur, the 10th king of Arnor, in 861 of the Third Age, there was a contention among his sons who would be the next ruler.
Yeah, he had 3 sons, and the eldest son was the true king of Arnor by the rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he claimed the whole kingdom of Arnor. But he was now really only in control of an area that was 1/3 of the kingdom called Arthedain.
Yeah, the other two established Cardolan and Rhudaur, respectively. And essentially the kingdom becomes like a 3-part kingdom.
Yeah.
We have an excerpt here from The Return of the King, Appendix A, Annals of the Kings and Rulers, read by Trevor.
In Arthedain, the line of Isildur was maintained and endured, but the line soon perished in Cardolan and Rhudaur. There was often strife between the kingdoms, which hastened the waning of the Dunedain. The chief matter of debate was the possession of the Weather Hills and the land westward towards Bree. Both Rhudaur and Cardolan desired to possess the Amansul, which stood on the borders of their realms, for the Tower of Amansul held the chief Palantir of the north, and the other two were both in the keeping of Arthedain.
Yeah, they're constantly fighting over the Palantir.
That seems to be like a regular recurring thing. Everybody wants those darn things.
They're pretty useful.
They're valuable. They're 7 of a kind, really.
7 of a kind.
That kind of instant long-distance communication wasn't possible.
Yeah, Feanorian FaceTime, remember?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
So let's get into a little bit of the destruction of that North Kingdom.
Yeah.
So seeing that there was disunion among the Dunedain of the North, the Witch King of Angmar decided it was a great time to invade the North.
Yeah, the 3 kingdoms set aside their differences for a while and fought together in a long and destructive war, but they were eventually defeated by Angmar. And let's talk about their last king, king of Arthedain, Arvedui.
Yeah, so the last king of Arnor was Arvedui, and he was forced to flee from the destruction of Arnor with 2 of the Palantiri.
Yeah, the king and his men were helped by the snowmen of Foreshell, because they were fucking starving in the Blue Mountains in the dwarf mines.
Yeah, they were on the run, and basically the snowmen of Foreshell saved their asses.
Yeah, they sure did. And he gave to them the Ring of Barahir as ransom, but he later drowned in the sea when his ship sank, trying to sail away to Lindon.
And unfortunately, the 2 Palantiri went down with the ship with him, and they are lost. somewhere at the bottom of the bay.
Yep.
I wonder, could you communicate with the lost Palantiri? You just wouldn't be able to see anything?
I'm sure you could, yeah, because it would be underwater.
Be like
yeah.
fish and bubbles.
There'd be
and
two of them
stuff.
underwater, yeah.
That'd be
Maybe some
kind of neat.
skeletons.
Yeah.
You just shine a light through your Palantiri and have like a display of the ocean or undersea life on your wall.
Fucking Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
super cool.
All right, well, let's get into after the fall of Arnor. The Dunedain are still around, so what do? They kind of reorganize into a chieftainism. Is that what you say? A chieftainry?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, they went away with the kings because they figured they didn't really have a kingdom anymore.
Right.
So since they're all just kind of rangers at this point,
Yeah, they're kind of just roaming around.
they chose a chieftain.
Yeah. The North Kingdom was utterly destroyed, but some of the Dunedain survived along with the line of Isildur, which remained unbroken.
Yeah, Aronarth, son of Arvidwi, decided not to take the title of king, but instead chieftain of the Dunedain of the North. And there were ultimately 16 chieftains from Aronarth to Aragorn II, our buddy.
Yeah, and we know he would eventually renew the North Kingdom and become High King of both Gondor and Arnor.
Getting rid of chieftains altogether, yeah.
Yeah.
Was there a particular reason that they decided on that different terminology?
I think they just
I think it was
figured
just, they didn't, I mean...
they didn't really have a kingdom at
There
that
was no
point.
organization. There was no state infrastructure. It was all gone.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe
They were
just
just kind of a roaming people.
a result of the size, right?
Mhm.
That makes
And
sense.
many of them were killed not by... I mean, the plague killed a shitload of them. The Civil War killed a shitload of them. And then the war with Angmar, it was just too much.
Yeah, and I mean the Ranger, they didn't really have any permanent dwelling anywhere.
No.
They didn't have like a home
They had
base.
encampments and stuff like
They'd
that.
frequent Bree, but
Yeah, in
Uh.
Sarn Ford and places like that, you know.
So a people broken, sundered.
Yeah.
and- yeah.
Mhm.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, but they still remain true to their way of life, and they do defend what was the North Kingdom from evil for many years.
for many years.
Let's talk about some other Numenorians that also happen to be assholes. The Black Numenorians.
So while the faithful Numenorians living in Middle-earth gravitated towards the kingdoms of Gondor and Arnor, the King's Men living in Middle-earth, they settled mostly in the haven of Umbar, and they were constantly at war with Gondor throughout Gondor's entire history.
Well, I remember we talked about Gondor being pretty big.
Mhm.
Did Gondor actually take Umbar?
Yes, Gondor did conquer and reconquer Umbar on several occasions. It changed.
Oh, the
Yeah.
reconquer. Okay, so
Yeah, they went
this is
back
a
and forth.
back and forth. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the conflicts between Gondor and Umbar spanned many centuries, and there was several instances of battles and shifts in control.
Yeah, one being the Kinstrife, which we mentioned.
Yeah. This is a civil war in Gondor, and the descendants of the original Black Numenorians, called the Corsairs of Umbar, they launched attacks on the Gondorian coasts for ever and ever.
Yeah, it was a constant beef. Yeah, after being defeated by King Eldakar, the sons of Castamir, the usurper, they took over control of Umbar and united in hatred of Gondor with some of the Black Numenorians living there.
Yeah.
And the descendants of the usurpers launched attacks from there for centuries. It was just a forever.
Yeah.
I actually remember the Corsairs of Umbar from the Return of the King.
Yeah.
What was this the last time that they had fought before then?
Well, the last time that they had clashed before the War of the Ring, most recently, was they were defeated by Gondor under the command of Thorongil, who is, guess who, our friend, Aragorn, too.
Aragorn in disguise.
And he was in disguise, yeah.
Some of the young Aragorn adventures.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's had more than one encounter with Aragorn. Or,
Yeah.
Well, not Corsairs of Umbar.
Oh, yeah. And when they were in league with Sauron during the War of the Ring, they planned to send a fleet up the Anduin to help besiege Gondor. But what happened?
Again, Aragorn.
Again,
Aragorn, yeah.
yeah, in the army of the dead, dog.
I suppose that's the bigger detail here. The army of the dead is really
He
what...
didn't do it by himself.
The army of the dead is really the scrubbing bubbles that just kind of like pours over the
Scrubbing
land.
bubbles.
Yeah, the scrubbing bubbles. I love that.
I call upon the oath of scrubbing bubbles.
I don't, every time I saw them in the movie, like when they came off the ships and they like poured over the field of...
It does look like
It
a
looks-
scrubbing
it-
bubbles
yeah, it looks
commercial.
Scrub bubbles.
Yeah,
I
like a
don't
dish soap commercial. You're right. Yeah, like when CGI used to be like kind of weird back in
Yeah,
the early
yeah,
2000s. Yeah. I see that. I think we should dive into another Trev check, though.
Yeah, I've got some questions
Okay.
about the Black Numenorians here.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I feel like I didn't really know about them
Yeah.
prior. So where is Umbar located compared to Gondor if they were fighting all the time?
Well, it's south of the mouth of Anduin. So Pelargir is at the mouth of the Anduin, and just south down along the coast, a ways is Umbar.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like
Yeah.
southwest of Gondor, essentially.
So it's a port city,
Yeah.
probably?
Port city, yeah. I would think of it as like a Singapore.
Up for trade?
Yeah, definitely. That's why it was there. That's why they put it there in the first
Yeah,
place.
very much so.
Yeah. And I remember earlier we were talking about Numenorians and just their colonization, that Umbar was one of the places the Kingsmen first went, right?
Yep, exactly. Yep,
Okay.
it was definitely their biggest settlement. Yeah.
Does anyone other than Gondor cause trouble for these guys?
Not really.
No, they're actually pretty cool with the Haradrim around the area.
Yeah, they're friendly with the Easterlings over there.
Yeah, I guess they'd be Southrons, right?
Oh, Southern.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
Haradrim. Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. Then, I mean, one person they definitely had beef with seems to be Aragorn. Why? Why do
Yeah.
you think that is?
It's actually 100% personal. Yes.
Yeah.
Personal. Okay.
Because these are descendants of the Kinstrife rebels, Castamir the Usurper, right? From the Kinstrife. You remember those? We just talked about them.
Okay.
So
they were Dunedain.
They're Dunedain, so that means, and they're Dunedain princes.
Right. So
they're fucking related, dog.
they're family.
They're fucking family.
Yeah, they're pissed off.
Yeah. Enough about the all them Numenorians for now. Let's get into some more middlemen. Let's check in with our friends, the Northmen of Rivanion.
Yeah. So the Northmen of Rivanion during the Third Age. So the greatest group of middlemen in Middle-earth was most likely the Northmen of Rivanion, and they were a confederation of men living mostly in the plains of Rivanion.
Yeah, and they were descendants of that greater group of the Northern Edain that you'll remember from the last episode, which makes them closely related to the House of Hador.
Yeah, House of Hador. So the Northmen became great friends and allies of the Numenorian exiles that founded Gondor. We have a quick excerpt here from the Unfinished Tales by Danny.
They were in fact a bulwark of Gondor, keeping its northern and eastern frontiers from invasion, though it was not fully realized by the kings until the bulwark was weakened and destroyed.
Yeah, they definitely helped to defend the region. So the men of Gondor and the Northmen mingled quite a bit in the early part of the Third Age, and they often intermarried.
Yeah, and this was eventually what led to the kin strife in Gondor, and we have to talk about, because it does involve the Northmen.
You're saying specifically here that because they mingled together,
Yes.
they ended up fighting each other?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's
jeez.
because you've got some people who are a little more racist and be like, you've got mixed blood.
Yeah, they look
you're
down.
lesser.
They look down their noses at the middlemen.
Yeah, essentially.
Only men would do this.
Of course they would.
Well, I mean,
You're-
the elves are just as racist.
Oh no, you're
Like,
right. Yeah, no, the
that's-
elves are just as racist.
Yeah, don't sell them short.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Yeah, they did have more than one kinslaying.
So the kinstrife in brief, in the year 1432, Eldakar ascended to the throne, and some of the people in Gondor, among the Dunedain, were very, very pissed off. And why were they pissed off?
Well, Eldakar's mother was of the Northmen. They didn't
Yeah.
like that. Racist people don't like that and openly rebelled to take the throne. And this was led by Eldakar's cousin, Castamir.
Yeah, they actually get they kick Eldakar out of Gondor, and he goes up north to the Northmen and gathers a bunch of them, comes back down and it defeats them, and they were eventually victorious,
Yeah.
defeating racism in Middle-earth forever.
Forever.
Yeah,
Wow.
That's right.
It never is a problem ever again.
Everyone's friends forever.
Yay!
Yay. As we know, the story of the Lord of the Rings ends right here before it begins. Yeah.
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 Yep. So yeah, this actually this kinstrife depopulates the shit out of Gondor because you're killing Dunedain on Dunedain, right? They're literally slaying each other in battle. So many of them were killed off. The strength of the Dunedain blood is weakened, and the men of a shitload of men of the north migrate into Gondor, and they further mingle with the Numenorians, and they kind of become a new society a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, it's this cultural diffusion that happens with them.
So the confederation of the Northmen Rovanion was eventually utterly destroyed by a combination of the plague and war with Easterling tribes.
Yeah, the people, they survived these conflicts in small pockets throughout the region, giving rise to some different groups of men that we run in the latter part of the Third Age.
Yeah, for example, the Men of Dale.
Yeah, Men of Dale. This is the city of Dale. This was situated at the foot of Erebor.
Yeah, this is from the Hobbit story, if you'll remember, over by the Lonely Mountain.
Of course.
And in the year 2590, Thror establishes the kingdom of Erebor over there, and many Northmen settled at the foot of the Lonely Mountain in a city that they ended up calling Dale. And essentially, these men, they were fleeing from war in Gondor and Rhovanion. They were just looking for somewhere else they could get away from all that shit.
Yeah.
Is this that same city that's like, right outside the mountain in the Hobbit movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one that gets destroyed.
That's Dale? Okay.
Yeah, we're about to
Yeah.
talk about that right here. Yeah.
Oh.
Dale was destroyed along with the kingdom of Erebor by the dragon Smaug in 2770 of the Third Age. There
Okay.
you
All
go,
right.
Trev.
I'm piecing that together now.
There you
There
go.
you go. Many of the refugees went on to dwell in a place called Lake Town, which is with the Lake Men, who are another group of Northmen.
Mm-hmm.
And they found Lake Town with the descendants of Girion, the Lord of Dale.
Yeah, so we got a little more intermingling. We got the Dale men intermingling with the Lake men.
Yeah, Bard the Bowman, who slew Smaug the Dragon, is a descendant of Girion, the Lord of Dale.
Oh, very cool. I didn't know that.
I feel like Girion kind of sounds kind of dwarvish.
It kind of does. doesn't it?
It might very well be because they had a great relationship with the dwarves.
Mm-hmm. Very friendly.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the men of the Wilderlands for a little bit here. So there were a pocket of Northmen that lived in the Wilderlands in the later part of the Third Age.
Yeah, there were woodmen of Mirkwood, which we don't hear all that much about other than that they exist.
Mm-hmm.
There was the men of Lake Town, which is also known as Esgaroth. It is unknown when Lake Town was built,
But it's known when it was destroyed.
but yes, it is. It was destroyed by Smaug in 2941.
Yeah, Bard the Bowman, like Danny mentioned, heir of Girion, was the slayer of the dragon, and he was eventually crowned king of Dale.
The New Dale.
The New Dale.
New Dale. I like it.
And then Dale and Lake Town were both rebuilt and were once again prosperous and had a great neighborly relationship.
Take that, Smaug.
And they didn't have any other violence to deal with, right, Joel?
Never again.
Never again. There was never a huge battle there during the War of the Ring, right?
No,
Never.
never.
Never. Okay, let's get into the most famous descendants of the Northmen.
Mm-hmm.
The Eothade.
The Aothai, we won't spend too much time on them because we
covered the shit out of these
we
guys.
kind of spent a whole season on them, but
Yeah.
so the Aothai, they're one of the pockets of the Northmen to survive, and they were great horsemen that dwelt in the northern vales of the Anduin, and they were great allies of Gondor in their struggle against the Easterling tribes.
Yeah, if you remember that, if you check out that lesser known battles Rohan edition, we talk all about those struggles. And during the time of Errol the Young, the Eothade rode to the aid of Gondor in their struggle against the Balcoth. We all remember the field of Celebrant, right? The glorious victory.
Yeah, and this is when they go from being the Eothade into the Rohirrim.
Right.
Ooh, a transition.
That's right, because
Yeah.
after they helped them out, they were gifted some land,
A
and
people renewed.
Errol swore an oath to Cirion, the current steward of Gondor, to always be allies to each other, and in return they were gifted the land of Calenarden to dwell in, which was pretty empty at this point because everyone had died from a plague.
Yep. And the Eothade moved out of the north, most of them at least. I'm sure some of them stayed behind.
Probably.
But they formed the kingdom of Rohan.
And that's where we get the Rohirrim.
Yeah. And to hear all about that, check out our whole 6-ass episodes on the Rohirrim.
Check it out. It was actually, we were really proud of that. At first we were like, man, are we running so low on content that we're going to have to talk about the Rohirrim? And then we started getting into it and we were like, oh, this shit's
There's
actually
way a
fucking
lot of shit.
awesome.
A lot
It's
of Rohirrim
really
stuff.
cool. There's a lot of
It's
Rohirrim
really
stuff,
cool.
yeah.
War of the Rohirrim anime coming up. About
I've-
that shit, dog.
I've been hearing
Ooh,
good things. I've been hearing
yeah.
good things.
I've been hearing
That
good
does
things
sound
too.
good. And maybe it'll be, they can make it a little better with the whole animation thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because you can take more liberties.
It'll be way
I'm
more-
excited to see
way more
how
awesome.
they handle that. I think it's going to be a cool medium.
Well, who in the War of the Rohirrim, who will they be fighting, Joel?
Speak of the devil, in the War of the Rohirrim, they're going to be fighting the Dunlending. So let's talk about them for a minute here. That's on topic.
Yeah, there we go. They're also called the Gwathurium.
That's a
Say it
word.
3 times fast.
Wow.
Gwathurium.
Fuck you.
Good
that
job.
was actually really good.
Yeah.
Damn, I can't believe I did that. So these are a group of pre-Numenorian middlemen that lived in Dunland near the borders of Rohan.
Yeah, these men were constantly at war with Rohan and saw both the Rohirrim and Numenorians as essentially invaders and usurpers of their land. They did live there first.
They did live there first.
They kind of are the native folks at this point.
I am a Dunlanding sympathizer. I think the Rohirrim could have treated them a lot better, and they could have lived in peace and shared the land.
Mm-hmm.
And they tried to do that for a while, remember? If you remember from those Rohan episodes. But yeah, the Dunlandings are descendants of the Haladin that originally moved south out of Hildorian in the First Age.
Yeah, so they weren't even like Morgoth worshippers or anything. They were part of the Edain.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they sided with Saruman that one time, but that was just to get their land back.
Right.
At least in my opinion.
Dang, they do kind of sound shafted.
Yeah, they're colonized people. They really get shafted.
They also had their own language. They spoke Dunlandish, as it is called, which is a descendant of the original language of the Haladin.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, again, to hear more about the War of the Rohirrim stuff, check out in the Third Age. Check out our Rohirrim series, 6 episodes, all Rohirrim, all the time. Let's go back. Let's go back east. How about it, guys?
Easterlings?
Yeah. Easterling time.
Yeah, let's get into these Easterlings, what they were up to in the Third Age. So all of the Easterling tribes we hear of in the Third Age are seemingly evil.
I kind of assumed that all Easterlings are evil just based off of that knowledge.
Well, remember we
Right.
learned in the last...
I now know.
Yeah, now you
better.
know.
But,
Now you
but
know.
yeah, well, from the mainstream media stuff, Easterlings all just seem bad.
Yeah. The more you know, NBC, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not apparent if some of these were in league with Sauron, but they were essentially trying to invade the west of Middle-earth for whatever reason anyway, so they were just seen as enemies.
Yeah, and many of these invasions may have been spurred on by the Great Plague, which devastated the East.
Yeah, it's not like there was no reason for it.
No, yeah, it could have just been the age-old story of fighting over land and resources, you know?
Usual, yeah.
The usual. So Easterlings, they were at war with Gondor and its allies for the better part of 300 years of the Third Age. Not an insignificant amount of time.
No. And this was known as the Wainrider/Balcoth War, and it was devastating to Gondor and Rovanion. But it did solidify the alliance between Gondor and the groups of remaining Northmen.
So you're saying that war brought them together?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, the Eothade, who founded the Kingdom of Rohan, they became a strong ally and neighbor in war.
Yeah, the two fought for each other like back to back for almost 4 centuries.
Yeah, just helping each other out back and forth for centuries.
For centuries, bro.
It's a long time to be allies for.
Yeah. During the War of the Ring, the Easterlings sided with Sauron, and a shitload of men came out of the east to reinforce Mordor.
No good.
No good. Let's talk about some of those other folks that tend to do that, too.
Yeah, some of those other folks that came to help reinforce Mordor, some of them were the Haradrim, men of the desert regions of Harad.
Yeah, they are descendants of those men that awoke in Hildorian, but stayed in the east.
Yeah, the men of Harad were friendly with the king's men and learned much from them. So they were not friends of our people over in Gondor, our faithful.
Yeah. But later the Numenorians would become straight up fucking murderous oppressors of the Haradrim. Haradrim were often sacrificed to Morgoth or sold into slavery.
Jesus Christ.
Wait, are you saying the Numenorians did that?
Yeah.
Oh, dang, okay.
Yeah, they got real evil real quick.
You guys used the word tyrants earlier, and I'm seeing it.
No, it says, I can't remember where this is, but remember, Joel, it says that our Pharazôn, other than Sauron, was the world's greatest tyrant of the Second Age.
Yeah, I think when we did the character profile, it's kind of what we said, right?
Yep,
like even ChatGPT agreed.
Yeah, that's true. ChatGPT
He
did
became
agree.
the greatest tyrant the world had ever known.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were fucking monsters, man.
Yeah, totally. But the Haradrim, they did march on behalf of Sauron in the War of the Ring.
Yeah, kind of understandable when you had Numenorians coming and fucking taking them for human sacrifices and shit. You're not going to be
But that was under the command of Sauron. That's what's really weird. They turn around and they serve Sauron.
What the hell? That's brutal. Sauron is a tricky bastard.
They love their oppressor,
Oh my
man.
God.
That's true. Well, there are some among the Haradrim that didn't serve Sauron, surprisingly enough, and they're mostly hiding in the woods and mountains of the region there.
Yeah, so there are some cool Haradrim out there.
We just don't hear much about them.
We just don't hear much
They're
about them.
unfortunately just kind of on the run.
Yeah, the next group of men we don't hear much about either. They're the men of Khand.
I actually didn't know about these men at all.
Yeah, they're also called the Variag.
Yeah, so from the region of Khand, just southeast of Mordor, that's where these guys are from. And little is known about this mysterious group of people, but one thing we do know is that they were allied with Sauron during the War of the Ring. That's kind of how we know about them.
Yeah, they were part of the double fucked Gondor situation, if you remember right.
Yeah, when the men of the East and South allied against Gondor and kind of came at them.
Yeah. Yeah, they kind of hammer and anviled them.
Mm-hmm.
Weird. So, race of men that kind of only exists in the story to be materials of war.
Yeah,
Yep.
in a sense.
Pretty
Yeah.
much.
I mean, it mentions that, like, some of these men resisted, but, like, there's no real,
We don't get to see much of it.
Yeah.
It was
Right.
just kind of vaguely mentioned.
Yeah. So let's get away from some of these more strange groups and get into the coolest one.
Hell yeah. This is probably our favorite, right?
Yeah, dude. I think if I learned anything from these men episodes, is that the Druidane are dope as fuck, right?
Yeah.
Secret heroes of Middle Earth.
Yeah, secret heroes of Middle Earth.
Hell yeah, they are. So, yes, the Druidane during the Third Age. So by the Third Age, the Druidane of Middle-earth had dwindled to a relatively small population, mostly centered in the Druidan forest.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that secret hero of the War of the Ring. Han Han.
Anburihan! Love that guy.
Love him. Love him, love him. He was the leader of the Druidan forest during the War of the Ring.
Yeah, he provided some invaluable help to the Rohirrim when they were riding to the aid of Minas Tirith. Essentially, Han showed them an abandoned road through the mountains called the Stonewain Valley, and this allowed the Rohirrim to get to Minas Tirith faster and avoid an ambush that was set up for them on the way. But this was only under the condition that essentially they leave the Druidane the fuck alone from here on out, because up until this point, weren't they still actively hunting the Druidane like
They
animals?
said, Han said they hunt them like beasts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fucking shitty.
Yeah, Aragorn gave them the Druidan forest as a gift after the War of the Ring. There's a really cool part where he shouts to them like, "I'm the heir of Isildur, and this is forever your realm," or whatever.
Yeah, he's essentially like shouting at what seemingly is just a
dark
A dark
forest.
forest.
And then you hear the drums and the
In answer.
Oh, yeah.
That's really awesome. I mean, they had been there since part of the since they left
Hildorian.
Hildorn. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they went across the sea back, and they just chilling in that forest for a long time, right?
Yeah.
like probably all of the Third Age.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, once they got back from Numenor, they were almost completely confined to parts of southern Gondor and the Druidan forest.
Hell yeah. But we love our Druidane.
Yeah, we
But
do.
let's talk about some other men. These are some men that I've always kind of liked.
Yeah,
the-
these guys are cool.
The people of Bree,
Yeah.
also called Breelenders. I almost don't even want to say men because they're all just all kinds of people in Bree. But
Oh, yeah.
I guess we are specifically talking about
Well, we're
men
talking
today.
about the Breelander men. Yeah.
The natives.
We're talking about men today.
Yeah, so these are the men of northern Eriador, centered around Bree Hill.
Yeah, according to Breelanders, Bree was founded back in the Elder Days, and their ancestors came from the valleys of the White Mountains and the Misty Mountains near the Gap of Rohan back in the Elder Days.
Yeah, in my humble opinion, after studying these men for so long, this most likely makes them Halidin.
Likely, yeah.
Yeah.
I would trust your assessment on that.
Yeah, and those were members of the original southern group of Atani that left Hildorian in the First Age. But also, in my research, I learned that these could be partially descended from the House of Bor.
The Easterling?
The Easterling, yeah, the good Easterling from the First Age, remember? It says in the Silmarillion that they fled into northern Eriador after the Battle of Unnumbered Tears.
Okay, yeah.
So they could have mingled with the other middlemen there.
I could see it.
Yeah, and maybe that's where the Breelanders come from. You never know.
Very cool. Very cool. I love some of this. A little bit of Tolkieneering.
Yeah. But Bree is the economic and cultural hub of northern Eriador, for sure.
Yeah, it was the center of trade, being right there on the Great East Road. And it was frequented by the dwarves traveling to their mines in the Blue Mountains. So there was a lot of good traffic through there.
How big do you think it was?
Bree?
Yeah.
Bree?
It was a pretty big settlement.
It's like, yeah, it's on a big hill.
It's on a big old hill.
It's like there's like a fence around it,
Mhm.
and it's like on a hill.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I think there's multiple hills, maybe, if I remember right.
It's a pretty big place from what I remember.
Yeah, well, stating here that it's an economic hub, I kind of assumed it'd have to be like pretty sizable. I mean, they're big enough to have an inn too. I mean, we know that from the movies and the book and the Lord of the Rings. So
Yeah. And there was actually 3 distinct types of peoples living in Bree at in the Third Age during the Lord of the Rings. Who do we got, Joel?
So we had the middlemen of Bree, as we know. We've been kind of talking about them.
Yeah.
We've got the Dunedain Rangers, who we also talked about. And then we've also got, of course, the hobbits of Bree.
Hobbits, who are technically of the race of men, so maybe we'll be talking about them in like 2 minutes here. Maybe no.
Perhaps.
You never know. In the Third Age, the Inn of the Prancing Pony was an important place.
Yeah, the Prancing Pony was an inn that was built by the Butterbur family sometime in the Third Age. And it was an important place for hobbits, men, and dwarves, pretty much anyone going through Bree.
Yeah, you had to be at the Prancing Pony. You know?
Anyone who was anybody been to the Prancing Pony.
That's where Tobald Hornblower first heard about pipeweed.
There you go.
Yeah, I learned that the other day.
Pretty fucking cool.
Dang. Also, a whole lot of stuff converges at the Prancing Pony.
Oh yeah, that's where Thorin and Gandalf planned their quest to Erebor.
That's where they meet for the first time. Yeah.
That's where Frodo finally meets Aragorn for the first time, right?
Strider.
A lot of cool shit.
Yeah, Butterbur is the one that holds on to Gandalf's letter. Yeah, very important things happen at the Prancing Pony.
Well, being that that Bree itself was in Northern Eriador, wouldn't that kind of be in the jurisdiction of the North Kingdom?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. When Elendil formed Arnor, Bree was incorporated into it in 3320 of the Second Age.
Ah, part of a bigger kingdom. Okay.
Yeah. They bend the knee to the king of Arnor.
Being that so many people like frequent Bree or live in Bree, like different types of, men and dwarves, etc. Did they originally have their own like native language or anything?
They did. They had an unknown Mannish language, but they adopted Westron after the Númenóreans showed up again.
Okay, so better means to communicate, I would assume.
Yeah, but if I had to guess, their original Mannish language was probably a variation of the Halidin language, or like I said, could be an unknown Easterling language brought over by the House of Bor.
That'd be pretty cool.
But all right, guys, this is your reward for listening to all of our stuff about men. Who is the last offshoot of the race of men?
Yeah, so the last group we're going to talk about today is going to be hobbits, surprisingly enough. Because hobbits are actually considered relatives of men.
Yeah, the younger children of Iluvatar, they call them. According to the Lord of the Rings, the hobbits lost the genealogical details of how they are related to the race of men.
Yeah, this implies that the hobbits have the gift of men and do pass beyond Arda, for all we know.
Yeah, we do know that hobbits live longer than men. Around 100 to 130 years is a good span.
Hobbits were accepted as an adult at the age of 33 versus 21 for most men, and then I think we said was 25.
25 for the Númenóreans. Yeah.
And the oldest known hobbits were the old Took, who died at 130 years, and then there was good old Bilbo Baggins, who outlived the old Took by 1 year, 131.
Well, that's just when he left, too, right? Because isn't that when...
I suppose, yeah, because he
we don't know when he died, really.
He sails over to Valinor.
He beat him at least by 1 year.
Well, and I think we've talked about it before. The people who have the gift of men in Valinor probably tend to live quite a bit longer too, right?
Just because of healthcare, essentially.
Healthcare, healthcare in Valinor is out of this world.
Healthcare there.
Yeah.
So the most distinguishing feature of hobbits is their short stature. They're smaller than dwarves, usually between 2 and 4 feet tall, and over time, hobbits became even shorter than that.
Yeah, hobbits have furry feet with leathery soles, and they generally don't need shoes or boots.
Yeah, well, as we know, they have slightly pointed ears.
Yes, which leads us to a goof 'em up from last week.
A little correction from our episode, or just our last episode, 82, where we were still talking about men.
So I had asserted that neither elves nor hobbits had pointed ears, that was just a thing of European folklore.
A misconception.
So strangely enough, there is no real hard evidence that Tolkien meant his elves to have pointed ears. Yeah, Tolkien, he describes the physical differences between elves and men on several occasions, but there is never any mention of them being differentiated by their ears.
Wait, really?
Yes. Wouldn't that be the most obvious thing you'd list?
Yeah.
Yeah, the European pointy-eared elf was so part of the culture that we've just always accepted it as part of Tolkien as well, but he didn't necessarily mean for that to be so. However, there is hard evidence, my friends, to support that hobbits did have slightly pointed ears.
Yeah, who would have thunk it?
Who would have thunk it? And I dug up this letter from J.R.R. Tolkien to Houghton Mifflin in 1938. This was to describe Bilbo for an illustration that they were doing. An illustrated version of The Hobbit they were doing. And Joel's going to read that letter for us. Part of that letter.
I picture a fairly human figure, not a kind of fairy rabbit, as some of my British reviewers seem to fancy. Fattish in the stomach, shortish in the leg. A round, jovial face, ears only slightly pointed and quote-unquote elvish. Hair short and curling, brown. The feet, from the ankles down, covered with brown, hairy fur. Clothing, green velvet breeches, red or yellow waistcoat, brown or green jacket, gold or brass buttons, a dark green hood and cloak, belonging to a dwarf.
And we got a note here that Tolkien uses the words elvish in quotes because at this time, this is 1938, guys.
Mm-hmm.
So at this time, Tolkien's elves were unknown to most people, unless you had just read The Hobbit or got an early version, because it came out in 1937.
Mm-hmm.
So like, unless you had like just fucking read that book, you didn't know that Tolkien had his idea of elves. But he was using the quotes to refer to elves of European art, which are almost always depicted with pointy ears.
Can I point out that description also kind of makes me think of a leprechaun? Because
In a way, yeah.
he describes him like, with the pointy ears, short, but also wearing a lot of green and
the
gold buttons and stuff.
When you say leprechaun, I just think of Warwick Davis as the leprechaun from Leprechaun films.
Give me back my gold.
Oh my gosh, a horror movie with Bilbo Baggins as the murderer.
We watched Leprechaun on St. Paddy's Day last year. Fun time.
So hobbits were skilled listeners and had particularly good eyesight, and they were nimble and dexterous in their movements, although they were inclined to be fat and did not hurry unnecessarily.
Right. I love that. Don't do it unless you have to. The hobbits who lived in the Shire, they dressed in bright colors and were fond of yellow and green. And we've got an excerpt from the Fellowship of the Ring prologue, read by Trevor.
They dressed in bright colors, being notably fond of yellow and green, but they seldom wore shoes, since their feet had tough, leathery soles, and were clad in a thick curling hair, much like the hair of their heads, which was commonly brown. Their faces were as a rule good-natured rather than beautiful, broad, bright-eyed, red-cheeked, with mouths apt to laughter, and to eating and drinking. And laugh they did, and eat, and drink, often and heartily, being fond of simple jests at all times.
You sound like fun folks.
Sound like it. Hobbits, they spoke the common speech, which is Westron. Most hobbits were friendly and go-lucky and happy-go-lucky as a rule.
Yeah, they were also very fond of farming, socializing, and just generally talking about genealogies.
Yeah, they love that.
And the giving and receiving of presents.
Seems kind of weird to me that they're so obsessed with genealogies, yet they can't remember where they split off.
I always thought that was very ironic,
That
too.
is ironic.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a quick excerpt here from the Fellowship of the Ring, the prologue, read by Danny, talking about them.
They do not understand or like machines more complicated than a forge bellows, a watermill, or a hand loom, though they were skillful with tools. They are quick of hearing and sharp-eyed, and though they are inclined to be fat and do not hurry unnecessarily, they are nonetheless less nimble and deft in their movements. They possessed from the first the art of disappearing swiftly and silently when large folk whom they do not wish to meet come blundering by. In this they have developed unto to men it may seem magical.
Hell yeah. Now let's talk about another characteristic of hobbits that I'm sure everyone will be familiar with. Hobbits love food and drink.
Yes. The hobbits enjoy 6 meals a day when they can get them, which is funnily enough something we had to look up.
Yeah, we had to fact check this.
Because in the book there are 6. In the film, there are 7.
In the film, there are 7. Yeah, we look at that, and then we each were remembering a little bit differently. Weren't sure what was up and what was down. But it turns out in the book, yes, there are only 6 meals.
Yeah, they add something called afternoon tea in the movie.
That seems kind of a weird, specific thing to add. Maybe they just wanted to get the number to 7 because it's lucky.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they had afternoon tea. I don't know if they'd call it a meal. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, let's go over the 6 that they did have. So we've got breakfast, second breakfast.
11 Z's? luncheon.
And of course, dinner and supper.
Gotta have them both.
They like simple food such as bread, meat, potatoes, and cheeses.
And hobbits were also known to have a particular fondness of cake and for loving mushrooms, prizing mushrooms above pretty much any other foods.
Oh man, minus the mushrooms, I could be a hobbit. All of this sounds wonderful.
I actually recently came to fucking love mushrooms.
I love mushrooms. I don't know what Trevor's problem is.
The texture thing,
I didn't
man.
used to like them. Part of it was texture and other things, but I don't know what it was. As I've gotten older now, I started trying them, and I absolutely love them.
Trevor's tripping. Mushrooms are great.
Aren't mushrooms supposed to be the thing that makes you trip?
It's true. It's true. No, that's what's great about mushrooms. A third of them make you trip. A third of them are delicious, and a third of them kill you.
Yeah.
They're great. They also developed a keen sense for brewing and drinking ales and beers.
Drinking good. And they also loved the smoking of pipeweed and blowing smoke rings. And this was a practice first started by Tobold Hornblower of Longbottom in the South Farthing.
Though generally timid, hobbits proved to have great courage, endurance, and resistance to evil straight up.
Yeah, a couple good examples of this. Gollum. Despite using the One Ring for years, he did not transform into a wraith under the ring's evil power. All the other Manish kings that got rings that
Right.
happened.
He did kind of go crazy, though. I mean,
yeah, he did.
He didn't fall to
Oh,
evil,
sure.
but he did fall to his own mind.
Yeah, in a sense. Yeah.
No, he was not unscathed by
Yeah.
any means.
But we also see Frodo's resilience to the ring, and Bilbo too. Bilbo had it for a long ass time,
He did, yeah.
and then Sam
did too.
Sam gave it up
Mhm.
willingly.
Sam willingly handed it away.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure even Isildur had some resistance to the ring's influence. Like,
My theory is, yeah.
wasn't he was like willing to give up the ring to Elrond, wasn't he?
No, he specifically did not do that.
He was specifically unwilling to do so.
He was going to bring it back to Arnor. I know that.
Arnor, was it?
Yeah.
Was that it? Okay.
Yeah, he was going to bring it back to Arnor. He was on his way there, and they didn't set watch because they thought, hey, we just kicked Sauron's ass. Nothing's going to happen. And then they got descended on by, they were outnumbered 100 to 1 by
Yep.
orcs.
Yeah.
Yep. That's got to be what it is. I'm just misremembering a little.
Yeah, they call that the disaster of the Gladden Fields. Yeah. During the long winter, Gandalf admired hobbits and their uncomplaining courage and pity for one another. And thanks to that, they survived.
And then also during the Wainrider days, during the wandering days of the hobbits.
Well, that'd be fucked if the Wainriders made it
my
all
God,
the way.
If the Wainriders.
Oh, no.
Those poor hobbits.
Those poor hobbits would have been destroyed. Yeah. No, so while the hobbits were in their wandering days, they were able to easily adapt to the various environments they visited, and they also adopted customs and language of the people that they were in contact with at that time.
Yes, of course. Yeah, they're pretty sociable, and they're pretty good at once they learn other people's cultures, they're pretty good about doing that stuff. And we have a letter from J.R.R. Tolkien again. This is letter 131, which is on page 158 of that book. If you have it, you should get it if you don't. But this is read by Joel.
Hobbits are entirely without non-human powers, but are represented as being more in touch with nature, the soil and other living things, plants and animals, and, abnormally for humans, free from ambition or greed of wealth. They are made small, partly to exhibit the pettiness of man, and mostly to show, in creatures of very small physical power, the amazing and unexpected heroism of ordinary men in a pinch.
I really like that.
Yeah, that's a cool letter.
It's a great sort of just explanation of
hobbits.
of hobbits and just how something so small can be so significant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, after settling in the Shire, hobbits, they preferred a quiet and peaceful lifestyle instead of their wandering years.
Yeah, they became very ignorant of the happenings of the outside world, and they became very suspicious of other people from other places.
Yeah, they always referred to people as outsiders. They're pretty xenophobic.
Hobbit's calendar in Shire reckoning has 12 months consisting of 30 days each. Pretty even and simple. I like it.
This is the same as the Númenórean calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. The hobbits of the Shire developed a custom of giving away gifts on their birthdays instead of receiving them, which I think is really cool.
I love that, yeah. A good example is Bilbo's 111th birthday, where he was just like...
Throws the biggest party fucking ever.
Literally everyone gets a gift.
Yeah.
Every Tom, Dick, and Harry, everyone's kid gets a gift. It was great.
Yeah, it was great. But for more about hobbits, check out our episode 36, which was all about Hobbits.
Hell yeah.
Dang, that's like more than half of our episodes ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, dude. Let's get into the final thoughts here. Some final thought sections.
Yeah, so that's most of what we've got for you today on men. So men are probably the most widespread and diverse of the children of Iluvatar, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. I mean, it's kind of a little off topic, but on topic. It seems like men evolve a bit or a lot throughout the ages. You know, hobbits coming to be.
Yeah.
So would genetic variation be like more of a problem for elves since they hardly reproduce? Like, would elves are there any evolutions spawned from elves?
I would think so. Men seem to have much more variation, and if I had to guess, that would probably be caused by more generations of reproduction.
Yeah, I don't know that elves would probably have as much variation or diversity in general, just because of those long lives.
Yeah, and they don't reproduce quickly or often. Yeah, which would probably lead to less variation if we applied the principles of our science.
Our science.
To Middle Earth.
I mean, I suppose it would make sense too. Like elves would probably have less need to evolve. I mean, they can't get sick, right?
Yeah, they're
Right,
already
yeah,
pretty
it's-
great as it is.
yeah. They're only slain. Yeah, so like, what would select them? You know what I mean? Just war.
Yeah, they're sort of they're kind of pinnacle, aren't they?
Yeah. So yeah, men. They also. It's interesting how they slowly grow to be the more dominant of the two kindreds.
Yeah, they definitely do over the generations and over the ages, really.
That is kind of weird. You kind of assume the ones that could live forever would outlast the ones who
You'd
can't.
think, right?
Mhm.
You'd
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, but the men, they're all over Middle Earth, literally
Yeah.
everywhere.
That was really wild to me when I was writing this. Is just how widespread men are.
Yeah. Do we even know of any like elves that go east?
Some of the elves did stay over there. They're called the Avari.
The Avari.
Remember, they
okay.
were the first ones that the men ran into when they left Hidlorian. Remember?
Yes. Okay.
Because
Yeah.
because elves also started in the east, so some stayed there.
Yep.
It also seems like the vast majority of men kind of were evil though.
Yeah, they returned evil straight away. A lot of them, which is interesting.
Unfortunate, yeah. No, they definitely were not made evil, and I wouldn't necessarily say they're predisposed to being evil, but they are kind of easily swayed.
Yes,
in
they
influence.
They tend to be. Yeah, but they did have some definite advantages over the Eldar.
Certainly.
Like we said, they did become the dominant of the two by the end of the Third Age.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
They're generally hardier. They can, take more punishment
Mm-hmm.
than elves can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It kind of seems like they have a much wider culture too. There's just so many sunderings of men compared to elves.
Yes, there's
Absolutely.
much more offshoots of men than there are elves. That's for damn sure. And there are a lot of offshoots of elves.
Yes, there are.
But yeah, who do you guys think is cooler, elves or men? Let's put it to a poll.
Yeah, let us know. Write a comment or, write us a message. Let us know who you like more, who you think is the cooler race, elves or men.
Yeah,
Can I give my personal opinion so everybody can side with me?
sure.
I would totally choose elves
It's kind of
specifically
hard not to.
because they get the choice to become men if they
No, only Arendil's heirs have that.
Only half elven, half men.
Well, okay, then
That's right.
specifically I want that offshoot of elves.
So you
Okay.
want to be Elrond, is what?
yeah,
you're saying.
I want to be able to like when I'm done and sick of the world, just go away. You
Well,
know?
yeah, that's a very one line of people.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's pretty much everything we've got for you this week, folks. This wraps up our two-parter on the race of men.
Yeah. It turned out to be 2 whole long-ass episodes.
There was a lot to cover.
You
Yeah.
dug up a lot of stuff. There's a whole lot in there I did not know beforehand.
I sure did, gang.
Well, make sure to tune in next week for episode 84, where we will discuss a bunch of the First Age references in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting episode. I'm excited for it. But yeah, thanks again for listening to KOT Podcast. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on new episodes. And if you could rate us and give us a review, that would be great.
Big thank you to all of our patrons. Don't forget to subscribe to Patreon to help support us. That'd be patreon.com/KOT podcast. Subscribing also gets you some exclusive content.
And if you can't help support us on Patreon, that's totally cool. If you'd prefer kind of do a one-time thing, if you want to help us out, you can always hit us up. We can do PayPal or other services, whatever floats your boat, and
We'll make it happen, Kevin.
we'll make it happen. We would appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Follow us on social media, the most important of which, in my opinion, is the Discord. Join the Discord.
Link in description.
I second that.
Link in the description. Trevor is active on the Discord. We're all very active on the Discord, so check it
Yeah,
out.
and feel free to do an at directly at us. We've got some question pages. You can go there and discuss some things with us. We'd love to do that.
All kinds of cool stuff. Yeah, I love it when people be posting in the Discord. I freaking love it. Also check us out on TikTok at keep _on _ Tolkien _ podcast. And we are recently putting a lot more effort into our TikTok.
Yeah, go check them out. They're fun.
So check it out. They're fun. Yeah.
See what we got going on. And then, of course, don't forget to check out Twitter. That's our at KOT podcast for our Twitter. And then there's also Facebook at official Keep On Tolkien.
Check us out also on Instagram at Keep On Tolkien Podcast.
And lastly, don't forget to check out our merch store.
Go there.
We got a lot of really cool stuff on there.
Yes, we do.
Stuff we've designed ourselves and we're really proud of.
Yeah.
Stuff.
The website for that is keep-on-tolkien-podcast.tmail.com.
Buy stuff.
Buy things.
All right, but that's all we've got for you today. We love you guys.
I'm Danny J.
I'm Joel N.
I'm Trevor D.
We are
Keep on Tolkien.
Into